Hey everybody, welcome back. What we're going to go over today is a little bit of Cloud Spanner. Now, this is one of the, again, I think I've said this a couple times, one of the many different tools that we have for data storage up in Google Cloud. This one in particular is a relational database. We still get your um, consistency guarantees, we still get high availability, we get scalability, and it's pretty easy to use if you're coming out of a SQL-based environment. You should be more or less fine with this. Not all of the SQL commands are available to us, but more of your common select statements, join statements, all of those are going to be there for you. And what we're going to do today is a little bit different than some of these videos I've been making. I'm going to go over the web interface with you, and we're not necessarily going to write any like Python or Java scripts or anything like that. Python scripts, Java code in the shell. We're not going to necessarily follow along with the code lab for that. I will put a couple of examples in the blog post that goes with this, but we're going to look at it from more of a high level today to kind of show you what we're working with. So here I am in Cloud Spanner. So I searched for span and I pick Spanner. There is some stuff in the marketplace too for it. I just went to the, obviously the Google service that we want to use here. And we get a, pretty plain looking interface here where basically what we're going to do is I want to create an instance, then I will create a database, then I'll create a table, add a little bit of data and show you it working. Again, if you're coming from an SQL server, a MySQL, MariaDB, whatever your relational database of fancy is, you'll feel right at home here. Um, the power of this really comes though when you start interacting with it programmatically. You're adding and messing with data from some kind of a script, like a Python script or a .NET application, whatever you're going to be using it for. Again, I'll have some links to get you up and running with that, but kind of wanted to just show it to you from a high level here. So hide the learning stuff. Let's create a new instance first and foremost. So this is basically going to be liken it to a actual like some kind of an SQL server in a way. It's going to be the server instance hosting all of your databases that you would put inside of this particular server. So it's, kind of a level above your typical database. So we'll just call this 680 instance demo. Instance ID should get automatically populated. No, it's not because probably I started it with a number. Let's say CIS655. There we go. Doesn't like it starting with a number. That's fine. Now what we can get here is instance names. Obviously, that's what we're creating. We're going to be able to pick a location. Do we want it to be regional? Do we want it to be multi-region? Again, that goes with that availability notion that we can have. Regional if you don't necessarily care about availability in multiple regions. I'm going to go ahead and pick US East. Let's go US East 4, just for funsies. You can pick a particular number of nodes. You can start setting quotas. You can start handling throughput parameters, all of that kind of configuration type stuff that we might be interested in setting for a production level server. Now, with this particular setup I have here, I actually get a summary of the costs for this particular instance. And I see, based on what I have configured, it's going to be about 33 cents per gigabyte month. And I can store up to 2 terabytes of data with this particular setup. If I go to multi-region and I pick, let's say, I want North America 11, goes up to 50 cents gigs per month, and the node cost is going to be $3 an hour. Whereas regional, go back to US East 4, node cost $1 an hour, a little bit cheaper. I've got one node set here. If I had set this to 4, node cost goes up a bit. And we're just going to leave it as kind of our little demo here. So let's create this. We will now have an instance, meaning that we have something that we can play around in with databases. So let's go ahead and create a database now. Again, should not feel all that different from what you might be used to. Let's call this DB users. I'm just going to create like a simple user database. Now, if you are good with the data definition language, if you want to define your schema programmatically, which you can do, you can drop it in here. There are tools and best practices to kind of help you along with doing that. I'm not going to do that right now because I will use a tool to kind of define my schema for me. And something I would be more familiar with coming out of a MySQL server type of environment. You know, something like using phpMyAdmin to configure a database. Take all the heavy lifting off of it for me. So I have this database, nothing too crazy yet. Kind of your standard database informational parameters that you might want to see. I can monitor things, I could look at stats, import, export, backup, restore, all that stuff that we would need to do. Let's create a table, and we'll call this table, I guess, 2 steps here. We're going to call this table users, but if you want, again, to define your schema using a standard DDL statement, that would be like your create table, parentheses, ID, all that kind of standard data definition language we can do here. I'm going to use the editor. We're going to call it table users. I'm going to add a couple of columns. Let's give it a automatic ID here. So we'll tag that as the ID later on. We don't want it to be null. And we can't actually set it to be auto number in here. We'll have to do that later on if we want to. Let's go with username. This is going to be a string. And max length, that's fine. And let's add one more, say, email. Make this string as well. Very simplistic user table. Right, so that's good. Our primary key is going to be our ID here. You could go a little bit crazier, make it something a bit more impressive. I'm just going to use a basic ID, and it's going to create a table for us. And nothing out of the realm of possibility here. Excuse me. If I wanted the DDL code for this, it actually gives it to me, which is kind of nice if I want to reproduce this later on, or try to remember how data definition languages work. So we're just going to go ahead and add some data manually the old-fashioned way. So let's add a key. Email could be test@email.com. Username could be just Eric. There's my user 1. Very painful process, honestly, if we are doing this manually. User 2 at another domain.com. Eric 2. So there's only apparently one name in the English language. Okay, so 2 users there. What I can go ahead and do now is I could set an index if I wanted to speed things up, and fairly standard. I could also select all from table users. Run query. There's my data. Just more so showing you off the web interface in this video. Again, I will give you some links in the description for different ways you could interact with it, say with Python or any of these other languages. Here's basically a tutorial I've got for Python pulled up, but you can see here on the left, C++, C#, Go, Java, Node, all of your kind of standard languages that you might be using for something like this. Okay, just a quick extra addition to slide in here in the video. I was having issues with the insert syntax for the SQL query editor. I was thinking that it was impossible. I couldn't find documentation on it in their help menu. I was thinking insert into doesn't exist. Well, that's true because it's literally simpler. If I want to go ahead and say insert data programmatically, what I did, like a smart person, I went and looked at the demos and said, oh, it's not insert into, it's just insert. Of course. So if I want to add some data to this through a standard like SQL-ish statement, let's go insert, table users, put my column names, ID, username, email, values. Where am I at? I think I'm up to 5, new Eric, new email at address.com. So basically, I just had the syntax wrong is all that was going on there. If we go ahead and run this, query complete, select everything from table users. There's my address. So again, fairly standard SQL types of environments. So a little bit of an extra one. Now let's go back to the rest of the video. So I hope this is helpful for you. Again, nothing to be too concerned with in terms of a new technology. It is basically your standard relational database. Just has a nice shiny Google interface over it. So hope that was helpful. See you in the next video. Bye everybody.